Before we get started with today's interview, just a quick reminder, click the thumbs up, make sure you subscribe, and ding the bell so that you don't miss any of the great interviews that we have coming up. Now, on to today's interview. Welcome back, everybody. I am super excited. I have an awesome, wonderful guest with me today. Composer Joyce Grill has agreed to sit down with me and talk a little bit about her career, her thoughts on composing, some other stuff. Welcome, Joyce. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Sam. It's a pleasure.
Oh, the pleasure is all mine. So I want to start by asking a little bit about your musical background. Do you come from a musical family?
Yes, I'm from Switzerland, really, my family, and my grandfather was the local town musician in the off days. I mean, he was a mountain guide, but otherwise he was. And so as his family grew, the boys, the brothers all played an instrument, and so they were the local entertainment. So, and when they came to this country, then we all were musicians.
Oh, very cool. What a great history of musicianship in your family. And what are some of your earliest memories of playing music?
My mother wanted me to be a piano player. Now, she's this little lady from Switzerland who doesn't know a whole lot about a lot of things, but she managed to get an old upright piano. And there was a woman in our little town of Monroe, Wisconsin, who was trained in Europe. So naturally, my mother thought she would be the best teacher. And so she was also the most expensive teacher, unfortunately. But at age 5, I started with her. So that was the beginning of it all. But my teacher was classical to the core. And she was a wonderful lady because even though she was strict, she knew that parents would be listening, so she would give you music that the parents might really enjoy. And so I had stacks of music, just stacks, and the stuff she wanted. And that would always get an X on it. So we would start with that, And then if there were time, we would play the things that she knew I would like or the family would like or something. So right from the beginning, I had lots of music.
How did you get started composing?
Well, I never wanted to teach, first of all. I was an accompanist, and I did it all through high school. In fact, I started in 5th grade and went to college and wanted to be an accompanist. And it was just starting where you could get a degree in accompanying and that. And so I looked into that. I then went off to New York and accompanied and did all kinds of things. And finally came back home, and I met my husband and decided I have to do something to earn money because he was in medical school. And so I taught because my mother from Switzerland said, I don't understand what this degree is, what does it leave you ready to do, And so she made sure I got an education degree as well as a pianist and an accompanist, which Wisconsin didn't have a degree until just kind of my senior year, so it wasn't something that everybody had. So I taught public school music. Well, I taught junior high, and you have these strange voices and everything, so I would have to write pieces that fit my choir or fit what I thought the class should be doing. And so that's really got me started composing. And I loved doing workshops even then to teachers. And they would say, oh, I need such and such of a piece. And I thought, well, I can write such and such piece. And so I would write pieces that I thought teachers might use or would be helpful and that made students maybe would enjoy. And so that's kind of how I got started on that, because I needed music for my classes. And
wow. So your composing really came out of necessity. It wasn't something that you feel like, I have to be creative. It was
No. All I wanted to do was play piano. I loved accompanying, and that was what I wanted to do more than anything else. And so whatever it took to do that, then that's what I was going to do.
Oh, that's fascinating. I didn't know that about you. And I seem to recall that at one point you told me, correct me if I'm wrong about this, but you studied composition with Nadia Boulanger. Is
Yes,
that correct?
yes, I did. And that was another silly thing. I always wanted to go to Paris, and I was walking down the school hallway one way at the university, and I saw an ad for this school in a place called Fontainebleau, France. And this teacher was Nadia Boulanger. Never heard of her, didn't know anything about it. But Fontainebleau is close to Paris, and I wanted to go to Paris above all else. So I dug up the information and went to school and studied with Madame Boulanger, which was just, she believes in fixed do. I didn't even know do, re, mi. I mean, I've heard of it, but my teacher never had us doing that. So that was a real chore for me, especially when it came to sight reading, because, I could sight read things with notes, names, and that, but I couldn't, I had movable do, for heaven's sakes, so that's quite a difference when you had, and of course, this is all done in French. And so it was really, I'm sure I was as much of a trial to her as she was to me. But it was a wonderful experience, yes.
What was she like as a composition teacher?
I didn't do a lot of composition then, so I really don't exactly know. It was more her piano that you had to do, and like she could take a Bach two-part invention and play the hands reverse, when we're all struggling to just play it as written, and she could reverse the thing, things like that. So it was, I never got to really talk composition with her.
Who are the people who nurtured you as a musician and nurtured you as a composer?
As a musician, my piano teacher that I started with at age 5 until age 18 was a wonderful woman. She had studied in Europe, and she was very strict, actually, but we got along just fine. She was big on sight reading, and we sight read at every lesson from age 5 until age 18 when I left her. So that was one of the most wonderful things that she did for me, and that came in very handy. I really teach to the child who has maybe lesser talent. The parents are making them take lessons, okay? You've got to get something that'll excite them. And so that's what my early pieces were, trying to write something that I think they would enjoy. It had value. Either I had one tricky little measure that you had to, work at or something, so that it was a learning experience. I want to root for the underdog all the time. I would like to keep every kid that starts with me until they are age 18 and left or something. And piano playing is such a lonely thing. When you think about it, piano teaching is lonely. They're either in the studio with this person who may or may not want to be there, and how do you keep something going with that as much as you can? So I thought that was always in the back of my mind. What can I do for interesting people so that they might stay at it?
I love how you are really thinking about the students who are going to be playing your music and desperately trying to do something that is going to pique their interest and draw them in and keep them active and engaged. That's really cool.
I really just wanted to do pieces that students would enjoy. And that's why I got to do pieces like Melancholy or I Hate Music, or something that, the kids would maybe relate to, because I hate practicing, okay, well, let's have a song about hating practicing. Why not? Let's not wipe that off the board entirely. And if it makes them practice, then what have you done? So I always got my ideas at bedtime or in the middle of the night. I always kept pen and pencil by my bed, and I would write something down, because if you don't, you will not remember it in the morning. It's gone. I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm a funny composer, I guess. It's still, because in the back of my mind, all I want to do is play.
The Reluctance Composer.
Right.
I found the title of our video.
Right.
Joyce Grill,
yes.
Reluctance Composer.
Right, exactly. And I wanted, I wanted my pieces to be attractive to kids. It had to have one little point that would make them work. But just really, I want to keep kids at the piano as long as I can.
I heard you talk about doing multiple different things, that you worked in music education, you were a classroom music teacher, that you taught lessons, that you were accompanying, that you were composing. So you have this really multifaceted career. What are your feelings about that? Do you feel like, I wish I could have just done one thing, or are you happy that you got to do a lot of different things?
No, I'm happy I got to do a lot of different things. That was the thing when I lived in New York. You were either classical or you were popular. Crossing the line was, you couldn't do that in those days. And so I would have to fib when I was late for my show business rehearsal because the classical people kept me on too long and things like that. But I loved doing both. That was just so much fun.
That's really cool that you got to have so many different opportunities and so many different musical
Yes,
experiences.
knock on wood.
It sounds like it made you a richer, more full, and more complete musician.
Well, I had a great life, I'll tell you that. It was really wonderful. Met so many fun people in that you would never expect to get to meet. Like my in France, my piano teacher was Jean Cazatsu, and his father was Robert, and was one of the noted French pianists, and so he was my main teacher at Fontainebleau when I went there, and so he, of course, would come to the United States, and I'd always have a lesson, or we'd go out for dinner or lunch or something, and so one night he called and said, "I'm going to be in town. They're building this new thing called Lincoln Center, and we're writing. Copland and Bernstein are going to get together and talk about what could we write for the opening, the grand opening. And there's a party, and would you like to come along?" Are you kidding? Of course, I would like to come along. So
Wow.
I got to do strange and wonderful things like that.
That is so cool. What advice would you give to someone who is an aspiring musician and an aspiring composer? What is the most valuable advice you can give them?
Don't be afraid to try things and fail. You learn as much from failures as you do from successes. And I think that's really important. And especially in today's day and age, you have to think twice about going into music. I'm sorry to say that. Try it. It's not easy, and you have to be ready for that. You have to be ready for a lot of no's.
It can be, you alluded just a moment ago to the time challenges that we as musicians face for practicing. How do you manage your time in terms of practicing, in terms of composing, in terms of, doing workshops and doing all of these things when you were at the peak of your career and trying to balance all of this stuff? How do you do that?
Number one, I was a good sight reader. Still am pretty good. And that saves a lot of time. And so you have time to do the really hard parts and everything. Composing, sometimes I would sit down with the idea I'm going to write a piece, but usually an idea came to me, and it was usually in the middle of the night. I have pad and paper beside my bed. And if it's something you love doing, you find a way to fill the cracks, because I've raised a family, so you had to worry about meals and making sure the kids were doing what they're supposed to be doing. First of all, I am an optimist, and I will say that, and I love it, and everything's good.
I love what you just said, though, that if you really love something, you will find a way to do it. You will make time for it in your schedule.
Yes, definitely. And that's most important.
So you've done so many amazing things, and you've had this amazing career. What are you most proud of in that career?
Oh, raising my family, I think, despite it all. I had wonderful times. High school was wonderful. College was wonderful. New York was wonderful. And then, balancing between New York City Center Opera and Broadway shows, and balancing, and then when I got married and you had the family and you're teaching. And I remember I taught in those days, it was a junior high, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. There were, I think, 120 kids, say there were. That night, 118 showed up. Now, this was a blue-collar school, and all those parents were there in tears because, oh, my Johnny is singing. Oh, look at Susie up there on the stage, and that to me was more wonderful than anything else. And we sang 3 songs, each one in a different language. They were folk songs, but each one in a different language, just to.
That is really cool that you had that impact on those kids' lives, especially 7th grade is tough.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you deserve a medal. I mean, that is a hard age to teach because everybody's a little bit too cool for school, and to
Right.
get those kids to show up
Yeah.
and to put them in a position where their parents were proud of them
Yeah.
and see them accomplishing
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
that's a pretty special legacy. So one of the common pitfalls I hear and I see in my own composition students is they'll have trouble getting past that blank page, or they'll have a million things they've started, but they're just not able to bring something to completion. How do you get around those common problems?
I don't know, when I get an idea, it's usually melodic or something. And then if I'm just writing it for me, then I can go however I want to, because I don't have to worry about playing the fingering or you can't do that type of thing. Or if it's for the students, then I have to think about, don't try and do too many things, because you get so many ideas. We'll save them for another day. I have a little bag there by my table that I can scribble it off and put it in there, because I did all that, before computers, so you do it by hand, and so I try and do the beginning and the ending, and then the middle is fill, and you have to decide which way you want to go on that.
But what a unique thing. I've never heard anybody say that before, that they create the beginning and they create the end, and then they worry about what's in the middle.
Yeah.
And so you don't have the problem. You have completely eliminated the problem of, how am I going to finish this? Or I have something that is finished, that is begun but not finished. You've already taken care of that as one of your first steps.
One of the most important things in teaching is all my students learn the beginning of the piece, learn the end of the piece. You do that first. In fact, some kids I make learn the end first, because that's usually a little hard. If it's like the beginning, it's harder. So you start there, you work backwards, and then in the middle. Because if you're playing for a crowd, I'm sorry, they're going to fall asleep in the middle half the time. What do they notice? The first thing that they notice is you walking out on stage. How do you walk out on stage? You have already influenced your audience, whether you play great or not. It depends on how you came out there. Likewise, how did you end it? Did you, and you're up off the piano before you even played the last note? No, you've got to stick with, and beginning and endings are just crucial. So in composing, in learning a piece, that's my big, I guess, idea that you have to keep in mind.
That is awesome. I am going to see to it that every student I can possibly bring that idea to gets to hear you say that. That was so cool. That was just awesome. Well, I have to say thank you to you for something, because, when I went to my first WMTA convention, I didn't know anyone there at all. And I remember who came and sat next to me during some of these programs and engaged me in conversation and made me feel welcome. And it was you.
Oh.
So I just want to say thank you for being an awesome friend and being a mentor and somebody that I got a chance to look up to, and kind of welcomed me when I was, when I didn't know anybody or anything. So,
well, I know
I really
I have a
appreciate
wonderful picture of the two of us that I've always thought was so special. So, because you were so talented, and it was just exciting. Yeah.
Oh, you're very kind.
You love to see people just, through the years, how they grow and succeed. And you've done very well. It's been fun.
Oh, you're really kind. Thank you. That means so much coming from you. I really appreciate that. And I have so much respect and love for you. So thank you, Joyce.
You are welcome. Most welcome. You deserve
All
it.
right. You're very kind. Joyce Grill, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been such an honor and a pleasure talking with you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.